In this tutorial, we're going to cover animating an alpha channel to make this drawing appear as if it's drawing itself on screen over a certain duration of time. To make this a little clearer, I've made the composition background red. So you'll see as I start to edit, you'll see the red background appear based on the brush tool we're going to use inside the layer window. Now, once we're done with that, I'll convert this to white, export the movie I want, and when I play it, it'll appear as if the drawing is drawing itself on screen. So I'll go ahead and turn back my image. Here's my image, a black and white picture I'm going to use. And in order to get to the layer window to make this edit with the alpha channel brush, I'm going to double click on the file in the timeline. And you'll know that you're in the layer window because it'll say layer in the name of your layer. But down below you'll see an additional timeline, and you'll know that you're in the right spot once you see that. Now we're going to be using a paintbrush essentially in After Effects to hide this content with the alpha channel settings. And in order to do so, the first thing I would do is I would select the brush in the brush tool, the tool menu at the top, Command B if you like keyboard quicks. And then I'm going to go over to the right hand side because once I click on the brush, a menu on the right hand side is activated that allows me to make some changes to the brushes. You can see that the brush menu is very similar to the one in Photoshop or Illustrator. In this case, I'm going to choose a hard edge brush. I'll choose brush 19. You'll see that you can also change the diameter of that brush. Maybe I'll make it 25 instead, just as if you were in Photoshop or Illustrator. Now, the thing that we want to do next is we want to make sure that it's set so that we get this alpha channel generated. So down below where it says paint, I'm going to choose the mode normal. Channels, I'm choosing alpha, and then the duration right on. And what that right on means is that it's going to make an alpha channel for us based on time. The amount of time it takes us to paint parts of this image will reflect in the timeline with keyframes, just as if we were changing the transform with position, scale, or rotate. And we'll see how that works in a moment. So I've got the brush size I want. I've got it set for alpha, and I've got it set for right on. I'm going to start by painting quickly over the area of the face. Now I'm not going to do a lot of detail because this is a tutorial in which once you acquire the skills, you'll want to go and take your time and do it a little bit more meticulously because it is very time consuming. One other thing I want to point out is that in the composition settings, because this can be very time consuming, I've set the duration here for this tutorial for 5 minutes. And what that means is that the slower I paint, the more time I will need to fill in my image. Now it'll generate keyframes which can be moved and compressed in time just like any other transform function in After Effects. So it's always a good idea to start out with a really long timeline so you can take your time if you need it. Once I've got my duration set, I will click OK. Now I'm in the layer window and I'm going to start painting, and you're going to see red, and red will represent the background color I put in my composition just for reference. So you'll understand a little bit more clearly what's happening with this tool. I'll click and start to paint on the face, and you'll see now that red is being shown where the face was, and that's that background composition color I chose just to make it a little easier to see this edit as I proceed with it. I'm going to stop at that point. And you'll notice in your timeline, if you open up the effects, you'll see that there's a representation of the keyframes. Whenever you see a circle or a dot in After Effects, it's reflecting where a keyframe resides in time in your file. You can't edit those little dots, but if I was to open up Paint further and then go to Brush and Stroke, there's that diamond shape we're accustomed to. All right, so what that means is I could move this, I could make it go much quicker. Right now it took me about 16 seconds just to make that spot. You can see how this time can really accumulate if you're going slowly and meticulously. But that doesn't mean I can't take this and move it afterwards to compress the time of that function. So I'm just going to drag through so you can see what's happening. So it's drawing on screen, blocking out our drawing and showing our background layer below in the comp. All right, so I'm going to put my playback head now right at that second keyframe, and I put it at 1 point. Let's keep it at an even 200 for 2 seconds, and then I'll move the keyframe to there, holding the Shift key to snap it. Now I'm going to deselect that clip, and I'm going to paint the shoulder in. Now I've got my playback head at roughly 2 seconds because this is already transpired, and I'll just kind of add to that selection now and paint once again. So each time you stop and proceed, you're going to get a separate layer inside the effects window in the timeline, which we'll take a look at in a moment. I'll come around, I'm going to get the rest of the shoulders very quickly, not obviously going for any sort of accuracy. And as long as I continue to paint, it's taking that amount of time in my timeline to put that content down. So if we look at our timeline now, you'll see where that next keyframe has just been dropped. Okay, so it's way down here at like 30 seconds. All right, so I'm going to go back to my comp window, and now if I were to click and drag, because we moved the keyframe for the first function and compressed the 2 seconds, in between that 2 seconds and roughly 30, it's going quite slow. I'd like it to be around the same length of time. So I'm going to open up the Effects tab, going to open up that brush, I'll open up Stroke, and I'm going to put my playback head at roughly 4 seconds, and now I'll move that keyframe. So if we were to go ahead and close this out, now we can see the relationship between these, the duration here. So these are 2 second intervals I've decided on for that content being drawn on. All right, so I'll go back to my comp window, and now if I was to play that, you can see that that brush is filling in the content and actually hiding it. So what we're seeing below is that red background comp color we set. All right, I'm going to hit cancel on that. I'm going to do another one, and then I'm going to take a break, finish it up, and we'll come back and look at the finished product. All right, so once again, I will deselect that. I should double click. I want to get into my editing window now. I'll deselect it once I do so. If you have this selected while you proceed, it might override what you already have there. So by deselecting and then painting, it introduces that new brush time. All right, so let's just quickly go and we'll get the hair done. I'll make the brush a little bit bigger. So maybe I'll bump that to 35. And I'll go in and start to paint on the hair very quickly. And let's see what we have there. So you can see the keyframe being dropped there. Again, where that keyframe ends up is how slowly or quickly you fill in your area. But the nice thing about it is now I can open up the effects channel. And there's brush number 3. So if I open up brush 3 and open up stroke options, there's my keyframe. And because we're going 2 second intervals, let's put this at 6 seconds. That's 6 seconds. You know what, I'm getting 7. There we go. And I'll drag that to here like so and snap it. Save, obviously. And now I'll go back to my comp window. And if I put my playback head here, this is what I've got so far. All right. Now I'm going to go ahead and finish this up very quickly using the same function. We'll look at the timeline again before I actually render this out, and we'll go from there. All right, so I've quickly gone in and covered up some of the pertinent areas here to kind of bring this full circle so it makes sense to you. Now, what I also took the time to do was to go in and under each of these, the duration between these keyframes is roughly 2 seconds, so there's some sort of a fluid continuity when this plays as an animation. There's one other thing I want to point out that can be of importance here, and you'll notice that I zoom back here, and what will happen is if my clip isn't the length I need, if I run out of real estate for the animation to take place, it will also affect these layers. So these layers that represent the brush strokes, they have to be as long as the image. Otherwise, they just, if I was to do something like this, the picture is going to reappear where the horns are because the alpha channel is too short for the duration of the whole clip. So that's something I just wanted to point out. Now, another thing that's kind of nifty about this is that if I wanted to, I could change the sequence in which these elements come on screen. I could put them all against the timeline. At the beginning of the timeline, they could all come on simultaneously, or I can stagger them in any order I wish. All right, so I'm going to go ahead here now, and I'm going to make them all the same time sequence, 2 seconds each. So I'm going to bring these all back to the beginning of my timeline. I'm holding the shift key as I do this to snap this to the beginning of my timeline. So everything is going to take place over that roughly 2-second duration. All right, just so it's kind of a quick animation. All right, so that means I'm going to put my playback head at about 2 seconds. And I will tap N on the keyboard to define the work area. Let's go back to our comp window. So what should happen now is we should see that drawing covered up with that red over that 2-second duration. Okay, and you can see it's kind of looping now, so I'll stop that and I'll save it. Now at this point, I don't want that red background. I'm going to change it to white just for the tutorial now. You might have a photo that this is part of, and it replaces the photo. But I'm going to put the white background so it looks like it's a blank piece of paper being drawn on. So I'll go to Composition Settings, and I'll just make this white. Click OK. Now it's a matter of just using our compression codec H.264 to get the drawing exported as a QuickTime movie. So I'll go to Composition, Add to Render Queue, and I'm going to click on where it says Comp1 Movie, direct it to the hard drive of the computer. This will be, and I'll hit Save. And just for the sake of the tutorial, I'm going to go ahead and compress this at H.264. So I clicked on Format Options, Video Codec, Animation. Click on Animation, H.264. Click OK. OK again, and simply click on the Render button. I'm going to import that in, so I'll go to Command-I or File, Import. File. I'll go to Desktop, and I'll get the movie clip I just generated. I'm going to put this in its own comp window, so I'm dragging the file with my left mouse in the Project tab over the little red, green, blue button, just to the left of where it says HBPC. So I'm going to click on that, and now our video is in our timeline. Now, it's going backwards, so I'm going to stop it. And I'm going to right-click on the clip in the timeline. I'm going to choose Time Reverse Layer. Now if I go back to the beginning and play my video, it appears as if it's drawing itself on screen.